You're listening to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-laws who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. Welcome, Bianca, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Erica. Really glad to be here today.
I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am currently the acting co-director for Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project, and also the visionary behind the Believe Her app. But the title I hold, very highly is that I was one of Dr. Shalon Irving's best friends. So we actually met way back in 2002 when we were at Purdue University, which is in West Lafayette, Indiana. And I kept seeing these two women zipping around, and I think it was a Chevy Cavalier, and they have Virginia tags. And I was from Virginia, Richmond, Virginia originally, and I was just so homesick, adjusting to graduate school. I was 12 hours away from my family, and I just really wanted that down home Southern connection from Virginia. And finally, I was able to find out who these women were. And it was Shalon and Wanda. And we had met, Shalon specifically, and I met at a Black Graduate Student Association event. And she shared she was from Hampton. And I started connecting the dots and said, oh, you're the woman zipping around town. I said, I've been meaning to want to get to know you. And at that point, Erica, it was so clear, like we became fast friends. And I just loved everything about Shalon. I loved her energy. I loved her spirit. I loved how she held space. She was just so classy. And so we started to forge a friendship. And, she was studying sociology and gerontology, and I was studying consumer behavior. And, we really leaned on each other to get through graduate school and, work through the difficulties of trying to publish, doing research. And she was on the PhD track and I was in the master's degree track. And, we just, from that point on, we just kind of made a promise that we would just always kind of walk through life with one another. And, after I graduated with my master's, she graduated with her PhD, we kind of both went on into the world. And I landed in Chicago and went into industry, and she went on to teach at many different universities and ultimately landed at the CDC in Atlanta. Kind of between those years, Erica, as homegirls would do, you're planning your life, you're trying to figure out, complicated relationships and situationships and career choices and all these different things. And both of us were actually dealing with a lot of grief in our life. She had lost her brother, Sam, back in 2008, 2009. And I had lost my younger sister, Anna, in 2013. So Shalon and I were like each other's grief partners as well, too, and really trying to push through that, And I would say that, we started to figure out, okay, friend, where do we go from here? It felt like life was really dealing us a difficult lot. And we just felt that, becoming moms was like, that's where the hope was at. That's where our joy was at. And that's where we were destined to be. So, about 2016, we started, and Shalon had been exploring motherhood far earlier than I had. And really at that point, things started to fall in place for the both of us. And I got pregnant. It was July 2016, and I had met someone, And things kind of just went from there. And Shalon, she was already 10 weeks ahead. She was already pregnant, and we were so excited. So, two best friends pregnant at the same time. But I think, what I surely didn't know, Erica, was I didn't know the statistics. I did not know that, at 36 years old, that Black women were 3 to 4 times more likely to experience some sort of morbidity or mortality. And it wasn't until the tragedy and the loss of my best friend that I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is super troubling. So let me just back up and go to the part where, I'm pregnant and, we're journeying together, and Shalon was scheduled for a C-section. It was January 3rd, 2017. It was around December that I started not feeling well. And I had expressed that to my doctor and my nurse practitioner that I, was getting a lot of stomach pain, nausea, just feeling a lot of melee. And they said, oh, it's fine, just lay down and rest, as much as you can. And I remember it was a Saturday, and I woke up and I was bleeding. And, instantly, first person I called was Shalon. And she was like, 911 friend, called 911, called my mom, and she said the same thing, finally called 911. And they whisked me to the hospital I was supposed to give birth at. And it was like a level 2 of care. And, in that moment, my OB-GYN was able to come and be there for me. And she suggested, that I immediately go to a level 4 hospital, which was a few miles away. What had happened is that the amniotic sac was open, and I was essentially going into preterm birth. And at that point, Erica, I was only, I don't know, 23 weeks at most. And it was scary. It was frightening. So I was able to take an ambulance onto a level 4 hospital, and where I was able to get some solid care. And, that's where all the difficult conversations, were happening. I was barely over the line of viability, having difficult conversations with, high risk doctors, saying, are you aware of the risk, if you continue on? And my partner and I were like, absolutely, we completely understand. And it was about December 15th, that morning, I just was not well. I was on the MAG, I was on steroids. And I just remember calling for a nurse and doctor, and they came, and I was dilated. I was already dilated, and about 10, I think it was 10 centimeters. And it was time, it was go time. And they said, you're not going to make it. We need to get baby out, and stabilize the situation. And emergency C-section it was, and I had to do it alone. My partner was actually on the road. He was not able to be by my side, and my mother, she had just left to take care of something. So it was pretty frightening to deliver alone, but I pushed through and had some good care in that operating room. And of course, I had texted Shalon, prior to all of that, and just let her know what was happening. And she was just stunned because, none of this we had planned for, right? Like in our heads, we were going to have healthy births and healthy deliveries, and all was going to be well. But nowhere in our girlfriend chat did we imagine where one best friend would be going to preterm birth, right? So, after everything, she was definitely one of the first individuals I, let know that I was okay and I was fine and post recovery. But it was definitely a difficult journey. I had a 24-weeker, and we had some very close calls, and, in the NICU, we always had to worry about, different potential risk, for example, like even though he had hit 28 weeks, we had to worry about NEC, a lot of breathing issues, cardiological issues. So we pushed through, and my son Everton, he was born 1 pound and 10 ounces, and he was in the NICU for about 3 months. So he was December 15th, 2016, he was born, and he was released from the hospital. I think it was March 11th, 2017. But where I want to revisit is the point at which Shalon gave birth, right? So here I am in the NICU and, caring for my son. And, all I could do was just virtually and by phone cheer my friend on, and a lot of texts, a lot of phone calls, and as much FaceTimes as we could. And she went in, it was January 3rd, 2017. And she delivered Soleil Mina, Daniela Irving, and beautiful baby girl, healthy. And Shalon was in the hospital for about 3 to 4 days. And she went home, and started, her mothering journey and breastfeeding. And here we are supporting each other all the while. And I remember her saying, because we could, share stories and share our experiences, she was like, "Friend, I'm not feeling well." She was like, "My C-section wound wasn't healing well." Um, Her legs were very swollen, and she was many days not able to get up off of her chase lounge to really move about. She wasn't voiding, and she was very concerned. Shalon was so brilliant, Erica. Like, she knew her body more than anybody. And, I kept encouraging her friend, please push back on your doctors. Go let them know, like, what's happening, what you're feeling. And she did. She kept pushing back, saying she wasn't well. And I remember I was in the NICU. It was a Tuesday night, I believe, and her and I were going back and forth, just girlfriend chatting. And I needed to pause because I was able to kangaroo finally with my son. And while I was kangarooing with him, I, attempt to put my phone away. It's just a very treasured time for me. And I remember later that night, I got a text that said from I connected the dots. It ended up being Wanda, that Shalon was in the hospital. And I immediately freaked out, needed to understand the situation, figure out what was going on, and was able to connect with Wanda. And she said, she's not breathing. Of course, I tell my partner that evening, I'm like, I have to get to Atlanta. I have to get to my best friend. Shalon she was my world. And got to Atlanta that Wednesday night, and Northside Hospital, and she was in the adult ICU, and it did not look good at all. And we vigiled, we welcomed family and friends to come sit and be with her, and to just connect with her in that moment. And I was also there to help Wanda with Soleil. So, and just to add a little bit more context here, before I left Atlanta, I had to brief everybody in the NICU where my son was, to let them know I need the best doctors, I need the social worker, I need everybody on duty to know what's going on. That it wasn't an easy choice for me to leave my, at the time, 28-week-old son in the NICU. But I had to, because Shalom was my best friend, and that's what homegirls do. And so spent about a week in Atlanta, helping create a meal train, caregiving schedule for Soleil, and just really making sure that Wanda felt supported and lifted up. And came back to New York, to be with my son. And, that was hard. That was really, really hard, was, losing my best friend. And losing my best friend when we had made all these plans to do this together. We had all of these beautiful plans to alloparent and, girl, we're going to live in a commune and we're going to raise our babies together and they're going to be cousin brothers and sisters and we're going to travel the world. And you had it all figured out. But nowhere in the planning, did we imagine any of these outcomes that I would have an extreme preterm labor and that, she would not come out on the other side of the statistics. So, yeah, it's 2021, so where have I turned all that pain, and I've turned all this pain into pouring it into the foundation that Wanda and I have set up together, Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project and 501c3, and that launched about fall of 2019. And, at the time the kids, Soleil and my son Everton, were about 2 years old, going on 2 years old. And it felt like the right time to do something and to make change in the Black maternal health space and see what we could do to contribute to the wonderful work that's already been done, being done. So we spent 2020, Erica, really trying to figure out what is going to be the way we show up. How does Dr. Shalon's MAP show up in this space? So we did a lot of work, and I, wore my business hat. I come from a market research, innovation background. And what became very natural for us was telling Shalon's story, and giving the mic really to Wanda here. So Wanda did a lot of talks, events, public speaking. She spoke at Congress, and in 2019 of March, she actually spoke at TED-Med as well. So it's really lifting up the story and humanizing those statistics of Black women, dying 3 to 4 times more likely during or after childbirth, and humanizing that and saying behind that statistic is a Dr. Shalon Irving, for someone who advocated for herself, knew her body so well, yet this still happened. So we also wanted to do some listening. That felt really important to us as a foundation to figure out, well, how can we listen more and hear other stories? And so we started a roundtable series last Mother's Day, which was meant to be part research, part healing space, where we invited in several mothers all over the US to share their stories. And from that, what we thought we would do is also figure out, further than just storytelling, how else could we show up? So it became really clear that these roundtables could be something ownable for Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project. And we started to very quickly after that plan for another series in September for a Grandmother's Day roundtable. But in that, COVID happens. How will we continue this? So we started asking ourselves a lot of questions around, well, how are we gonna, pull this off, under the circumstances? So we started to think about digital. We really did. And that's where we got the idea of thinking about a digital solution. And we had done our homework and we knew that there were a few other apps out there. So Mommy, which is Mark Cuban and Serena Williams backed app. There's also Earth, which is Kimberly Aller's app, as well as Zula, which is Alex Chica-Mia out of Yale, 3 undergraduate students who developed something for the Hartford, Connecticut area. So we'd done our homework. We knew that something had already existed. And we thought, well, what if our spin and our take was, creating space for mental health as well as like the physical struggles. So that's where the idea of the Believe Her app really came in, was to create a virtual village where Black mamas, birthing people and their families could go to share, advice. It's a non-clinical app, but where they could share advice or even, words of encouragement, or what is even like some of the language that maybe you use in these very vulnerable spaces, in a hospital setting where you needed to command, a patient safety officer to listen to you or to get your nurse to listen to you. So what is that language? How does that look like? And creating a space for that. So that's where we're at. We're about 3 weeks out post-launch of the Believe Her app, and we debuted at the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, the virtual health conference. And since then, we've just really been trying to spread the word and get it out there and get people to come on over to the virtual village and be a part of it. And really the intent is to create a very loud collective voice that stands up against the medical violence against Black mothers and birthing people. And that's what we want to do here at Dr. Shalon's MAP, is to be a resource and to provide that.
The 2021 Sisters-in-Law Summit is being held Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's virtual. This summit will be the premier assembly of Black women, advocates, birth workers, health professionals, and therapists working to improve pregnancy loss and infertility outcomes using the birth justice, reproductive justice, and human rights frameworks. It will offer a national space for learning, discussions, healing, and organization for Black women who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Our 2021 theme is Healing is Our Birthright. It centers healing as a tool for joy, love, and peace on the journey to motherhood and life after loss and infertility. This Sisters-in-Law virtual summit meets the need to convene Black people working to improve our outcomes in pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Registration is now open and tickets are available. For our Sisters-in-Law listeners, go to sistersinlawsummit.com. That is sistersinlawsummit.com to register today. Once again, that is sistersinlawsummit.com. We do not want you to miss on Healing is Our Birthright and why we need to take control over our healing at this summit in honor of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. sistersinlawsummit.com. Yes, thank you so much for sharing your story and your bestie story. So what I love about the realness and the rawness of you sharing both experiences is really how they intertwine. You shared about, having a baby preterm and then navigating the NICU experience, which is a whole grief journey in of itself. And then, having the support of your friend as you were navigating that, and then being able to support, her and her family and her new baby on the other side. So I would really love if you could step us through just how you grieve this, because I feel like it's complex. You mentioned about you all had a shared experience with loss of siblings. But one thing that I know about grief, it comes back, especially when you lost other loved ones prior to losing someone else so close to you. So can you just share with us how you have navigated through just the complexities of your grieving experience?
It's tough, Erica. It's certainly not linear by any means. Even today is a difficult day when I'm called to recount the story. It's difficult. I miss my best friend so much because she's that person, right? That one person you trust, you can confide in, and you plan your lives together. And that gap is there. And what I've come to realize is that Shalon was so special that no one really fills that gap. She was so unique. But I would say that having lost my sister in 2013 to acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And then I actually lost my dad following year in 2014. I learned a lot about grief that, I became someone that just lived in the moment. And if I'm feeling sad, or if I'm crying, or if I'm missing them, just allow that emotion to be and don't run from it. And a lot of that work and understanding came from reading I've done from Pema Chodron. She is along the lines of a Tibetan, monk thinking, but a lot of it is centered around, leaning into grief and just and being with it. So that thinking, those practices has allowed me to work through my feelings and my sadness and missing my best friend. It's certainly not the solution, but it's worked for me. And sometimes I have to go back to how I grew up, which was very Christian, and gotta pull out the Bible and get on your knees. And that works too some days. So it's certainly been the layers of grief are very, very deep. But I will say that, and my mom puts it so beautifully. She's like, she always, when Everton was born, she said, Mija, Everton, he is the balm of Gilead. He is our spiritual medicine that our family needed from grief and loss. So I also look at my son. I also look at Soleil, and I see hope, and I see joy. I see light. And it empowers me, Erica, to really, really keep that joy, that hope alive, and I see that in them.
Yes, I love that. They both are miracles for sure. So
Yes.
I would love for you to share more about this app, and really how can we be involved, for the listeners who want to be involved in what you're doing with your app.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's still in its early days. Right now there is no paywall up. So we are actually welcoming, folks into our virtual village, whether you are pregnant or postpartum, or a family member and you want to support someone who is going through the journey. Like, we welcome any and everyone willing to, again, share their experiences, provide any advice, tips. Again, the idea is to create that very strong collective voice. So we fight against, systemic and medical racism. And the hope is, over time, we have enough stories, we have enough of shared space where people feel freely to share. It's also anonymous. So there's no connection back to you, which we see a true benefit over some of the existing social media platforms out there. So it just allows an openness and to seek well-being. So we are also on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're also on Facebook. So, you're welcome to just go to Instagram, it's at Believe Her App, and then Facebook, just look up Believe Her App. And then Twitter is at Believe Her App. So, just come over, be a part. We're excited, and we're definitely in growth mode. So bear with us, as we continue to grow the conversations that are being had in the Believe Her app. But we also see it as a really nice complement to the already existing apps, out there, such as Earth and Mommy and Zula. So we're just here to join the collective force and to really help pioneer the way, and innovative tools and solutions to tackle the Black maternal health crisis.
Perfect. Perfect. I love it. So, what encouraging words can you leave with our listeners, those who may be grieving, the loss of a experience, pregnancy and birthing experience, or those who may be listening who've had lost a loved one through pregnancy and childbirth complications.
Yes. So one of my favorite quotes that gets me by every single time is be big when you need to and be small when you need to. And this is a line from Pema Chodron. And I really love that quote so much because it gives you permission to be in touch with those very complex emotions. And it also gives you permission to, you know, to stand up in how you feel and be okay with that. So, and honoring all the range of emotions that you're going to feel. And I just love that quote so much. So be big when you need to and be small when you need to.
I love that. Love that. So where can our listeners connect with you and the app and any other information you want to share after this episode?
Absolutely, Erica. A few places. So I'm a little old school. I still like me some emails. So you are more than welcome to hit me up at the email for the foundation. So it's Bianca, Bianca, at drshalonsmap.org. So you're welcome to shoot me an email there. You can follow the social media for the Believe Her app. So IG is at Believe Her app. Facebook is Believe Her app page. And Twitter is at Believe Her app.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I link all of those in our show notes. Thank you so much, Bianca, for sharing your story, sharing Dr. Shalon's story, and really just taking us on this grief journey because it's not linear. It is ups and downs. And I know that the fight that you're on, as many of us are on, just to be advocates and activists around Black maternal health and why we need to continue to share our stories. So thank you so much for sharing yours and your besties with us today.
My pleasure, Erica. So happy to be a part of your community and share my story.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com to stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter. Please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.